Welcome everybody to the Edge Rowing Podcast. As always, I'm super excited to say that our guest today is Justin Best. For those that don't know him, Justin is U.S. Olympic champion from Paris in the four. Been in the U.S. team for juniors and under 23 since around 2015, 16. Yeah, a bit quite big on social media, pretty good at the old meme game, certainly a lot better than I am. And yeah, is now working as an analyst, I believe, and kind of was the whole time. But some loads of stuff I'd love to get into. But yeah, Justin, thanks so much for finding the time, and yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here. I know I've been helping out ancillarily with the edge rowing community for a while, so it's good to just hop on. And been a couple of months since our last chat, so it's good to catch up too.
That's right. Yeah. Justin we were doing kind of a series with us where he was just sharing his insights into the build up to Paris, which was just there's so much value in there, and just I'm excited to be able to hear more about your journey and hopefully in a way that can just help share that value with anybody listening. So yeah, certainly excited. And Justin, normally what I start off with asking is just hearing about what were your reasons for getting into the sport? How did you find rowing?
Yeah, so the crux of it was I was always a pretty active kid, and my parents kind of understood that I always needed to burn my energy because like at the end of the day, like if I didn't exercise or get out and do something, like I'd stay up until like 2 in the morning or whatever, and
Oh
just
yeah,
be a nightmare.
building
Um,
forts and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, doing the generic like kid who has too much energy stuff. And so I
Yes.
played a bunch of different sports, and I really wanted to do football. And I was at one point playing, and I was pulling around for a block essentially, and the guy that I was supposed to block wasn't there, and I'm like kind of like, wait, what happened? And then the next few minutes were just kind of like gone, and I just started like remembering back. I was like, okay, I was in the huddle again, and clearly I'd been shaken up, but essentially the kid did a head-on collision with me. And the next few weeks, I was like, concussions are terrible. I
Yeah,
I really don't want to deal
no
with this
joke.
again. It's just like any bright light was just overwhelming, and the constant headaches, and like I just felt lethargic and kind of like outside of myself. So football, I was just like, all right, I'm done. And so then I looked around for a bunch of different sports. I did cross country. I was trying to do shot put for track. I picked up like lacrosse for a little bit. I was like looking at all these different sports, and at one point, my parents watched The Social Network, where Facebook was founded by Mark Zuckerberg, and in
Yeah,
it, the Winklevoss twins are portrayed.
they
And my
row
parents were
crew.
like, "The old crow, yeah, yeah. Do you row crew?" And and it's funny. My parents didn't know anything about the sport, or they were like, "Oh, like Justin has a similar build, big upper body, somewhat like tall, like
They're
lean,
probably
like."
no
And they didn't know
crashing.
it was a leg sport, and they Googled rowing clubs in our area and signed me up, and I did it for 1 week. I was eighth grade going into ninth grade, so I was what 14, 13, 14, and I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do.
What was it
Never
that
looked.
hooked you? Specific? Can you remember what hooked you?
Yeah, it was getting out of the bubble in my little kind of community.
Oh yeah,
So I from outside Philadelphia, very rural suburban mix, and my high school was probably at most 1,100, 1,200 kids, and like we got to travel to the state of Delaware, and like I was exposed to all these different other schools because it was a club. So it wasn't just like, oh, your school, just like at that point. And so got to meet new people. And then on top of that, it was like I got to go outside, and I was outside and going this snaking waterway from
mm.
Newport, Delaware, up to Wilmington, Delaware, which connects to the Delaware River, which goes all the way up to Philadelphia. And we never, yeah, obviously rode that. That was, but it was just cool to me that I got to go down, new place, new people, and then like the teamwork dynamic of it, I thought was especially good because it wasn't like there was like all stars. You can have really good people with really good erg scores, but at the end of the day, you're only the greater of the sum of your like weakest links, or
Hmm.
the average of the crew as a whole. So you could have a superstar, but then also your bow seat who just pipped into the boat, his importance like is just as much the same.
Okay.
So those couple of things, and then and for me personally too, was like I could track my progress.
Yeah.
And like there's no other sport that has like an erg, right?
Hmm.
Where it's like you can see the week in, week out changes, your watts go up, your perceived exertion goes down. And something about that in combination with like, oh, I can marry that to my performance on the water
Mm.
of being like, I am making this improvement. And oh my gosh, the race that I did this weekend felt so much better than the race I did 2 weekends ago because I put more training in.
Yeah.
So and there's a whole other litany of things, but I think those were kind of the highlights for me and why I was like, I could see myself doing this, and really trying to, take it to the highest level of competition possible.
Yeah, for me, it was always the strong relation between input and output, and just you got such good feedback in terms of like how much focus or effort or time you would put into something. So that was a big appeal
Exactly.
for me. So, what within that first week or two, you were pretty set on either you want to get as fast as you can, or were you thinking kind of US kind of national
I
team
think,
pretty early?
yeah. I think I was just like, this is something that I can see myself doing. It complemented well the structure of the program with my school work, and it wasn't like, oh wow, I want to go to the Olympics, but it was funny enough, the 2012 games were coming up. Because it was 2011 that I started in the summer. And
Hmm.
then about a year or two, like call it 1.5 years in, there's a guy at my high school at the time who, and again, we were a really small high school, 1,200 kids. We didn't have a rowing team. We had to drive to Delaware to get over to this club. And he went to Junior Worlds in Trakai, I think.
Okay.
And like,
Lithuania.
yeah, yeah. And I think it was 2013 or something. He was in the Cox Four,
Right.
and he had that opportunity. He was traveling, and he got recruited to row at Berkeley, and like this guy was like the guy.
Mhm.
And I always was like, what, whoa, like I could do that? Like, is that
Oh, cool.
possible? And so like, he was it wasn't, his 2K wasn't anything like absolutely insane, but he was like really weight efficient. And so I saw that in myself too. I think he went like 622 at like buck 65 or something. So like pretty solid, especially back in like early, 2000. I know it's gotten like crazier
Yeah,
nowadays,
they definitely
but
have.
so I was like, this is something that like there's a path forward here, and I saw him doing that. And so then I asked him, I asked his mom, and
Oh yeah,
okay, he's where he is right now. Like, what did he do? So my parents bought me an erg, Christmas
best Christmas
2013 or
ever.
14. Uh, that's my mom always jokes. She's like, that's the best investment, best $950 I've ever spent in my life. Um, and like it is pretty funny is like both
And I'm
my
guessing
brother and
you
I
still
were,
have it as well.
oh yeah, oh it's
Yeah,
still in our basement. Yeah,
yeah.
like my brother will do use it for his like alumni rows and back in Pennsylvania. And it's funny, both of us were recruited to row for colleges, and we got scholarships, and
Oh
uh
yeah,
went
yeah.
on to like bigger and better things because of the sport, and because of that erg was in our basement. We could just walk downstairs, and I know this is a meandering,
No.
answer to your question, but I think like that all put it to perspective. Like he had the erg at home, he was doing these extra workouts,
Okay.
he was going to these identification camps, which were really instrumental to get your name out there in the
Hmm.
US system at the time. And I think like for me, I was going through some other stuff like kind of earlier on in my high school career, and
Okay.
um, rowing was always this release, right? It was if I had this emotion and I was an angsty teen, like I could go down to the boathouse and exert whatever my emotion was, in a productive way. Just like when you're going out on the water, like your technique might not be great, but if you're whaling on it, the boat will go faster. Just kind of like a fundamental. And I'm a high school sophomore at this point, so it doesn't really like I'm not like trying to light the world on fire with technique, but and I felt like I could exert the the energy that I needed to get out. And, when I would get off the water, like you're just so tired, you're dog tired, like you don't have enough energy to be like thinking about the other stuff going on.
Hmm.
So, in a way, rowing was like almost this competitive, oh, I see myself doing this going forward. But the flip side of that coin was almost like a therapy to me. And
Yeah.
it provided that stability in my afternoons of like a stressful day at school, and oh, this and that was going on, and like generic high school stuff. But like for me, it was always this, I could go out on the water, I could put in a good like 2 hours of
Mhm.
effort, and I would just be tired and do my homework and go to bed. That would be kind of my daily. And through that, I think like it's this positive feedback loop. You get into that mentality of like, okay, I want to do this at a higher level, but you also see it as like, I want to go to crew practice
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I know all of these positive benefits. And having that and marrying those two together, it's like I was one of the few people, not one of the few people, but there's a lot of people that will do the sport and in the high school level, they'll just be like, oh, I just want to do it to get recruited to my, Ivy League or
Hmm.
wherever I want to go to school. I don't really like it.
Yeah, means
Like
to
that was never a case for me. I loved the sport through and
yeah.
through. Like the terrible days, like yes, they all suck, but like looking back on them, like I loved it in that moment. I loved it when we won our first race. I loved it when we got third at our regional, championships and we qualified the men's lightweight for youth
Mhm.
nationals. I thought like that was insane.
So
And
yeah,
like that,
interesting. So like quite a few things. I'm just listening for what sounds like was the big separator for you getting into kind of the US system. One was just asking questions and looking for people who have had the success and then asking them and then doing what they said. And then,
yes.
having that outlet for you was another, and then just enjoying it as well. Were there any were there any other things that you think you were doing at that young age that started to get you that progress?
Definitely watching World Rowing videos. There's the
Everybody
number.
says that. Every
It's
every time I ask that question, people always say that. Everybody. So
it's low key the best way to progress your stroke. And
yeah,
then asking my coach to take videos of me so that I could see
yeah.
kind of like at the end of the week or whatever.
You
And
gotta
like,
annoy your coach all the time. I remember every coach I've worked with, I'm like, "Can you film?" I go up to them before. I'm like, "Film me. Can you film me, please?"
yes,
Yeah, and then
yes.
yeah,
And again, like this is like 2014, 2015. So like film to internet was still like it wasn't
right,
the easiest. Right now, it's the easiest thing possible. You have
yeah,
AirDrop, right?
yeah,
Like, and every phone has like a 1080p camera in it. So there's
yeah,
really no excuse nowadays. But I would
yeah.
always bug my coaches, like, get the camcorder out. Like, I want to upload it to the YouTube channel so I can like go through and watch. And then
Are
doing
those
that
videos still on
comparison.
YouTube?
Oh, they would, yeah, we had a private channel that we would just
Ah,
like upload to all the videos from whatever to YouTube.
I was just gonna say
Um,
it'd be cool to maybe see some of the old footage compared
I
to.
have some old footage of me. Yeah, I was actually looking at it like a few months ago because I had taken some of the video from like our club footage, whatever, and pulled it down from my own drive. So there's a video of me as a sophomore, or I'm not even a junior. I was a junior.
Okay,
So I was like 16 at that point.
cool.
And
What cruise were you watching?
a lot of the Kiwi pair.
Oh
I
yeah.
thought the way Hamish Bond road was something like
Mhm.
it's like and like in hindsight I was like okay there's a lot of things that I might not agree with my 15-year-old self with
Yeah,
just inevitably getting to the level of sport that I was at, but I think the way that he was so dynamic with his arms are crazy long, which I just don't have the fortune of having, but he still made his height effective,
mhm.
and he had a really solid swing through the drive, which I
Yeah,
think is
which is what
extremely
what I noticed in your stroke, like a lot of separation. Like you get a lot of your legs down before you open your back, like quite a lot.
exactly. And if you watch Hamish, that's kind of like what he does
Yeah,
to really extend his length. And he cuts off his stroke so he has a clean exit, so he's
yeah,
finishing before his body. But I think the dynamic for him was like his glutes and hamstrings were extremely engaged and his body was rigid. And then as they tapered off, he really got that extra.
yeah,
And you look on the videos of him erging, he does the same thing.
yeah,
And like I saw those test pieces of him and Eric doing like their 60-minute and half marathon records.
yeah.
Like I remember when those dropped, and I was like, this is absurd. I like that is insane. And like that was like for high school me, I was like, that was the most hype, like seeing those guys just absolutely ripping
Yeah,
it in their
I
like
remember
2014,
that.
2015 training videos. And like so again, like it goes back to I watched him a lot, but I also watched a lot of the like Italians and
Oh yeah.
obviously the GB Straight Four was doing,
That
really,
time,
really
I
solid
really like
things.
that crew. Yeah. Yeah, people don't watch.
Um,
One of my favorite races to watch is the So I think it's the 2014 World Cup in
World Cup.
Lucerne or
Yes.
Angoulême. It's one of those ones.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a
It was Australia and Great Britain, and they were like going
yeah.
like toe to toe.
And then the second half, they just yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
race.
exactly.
But great shots, loads of different angles in that. That was yeah.
Um, it was Bowsy, Alex
Gregory, yeah.
Gregory. I thought his stroke was immaculate. Like that
Yeah.
guy had
His
no
catches.
disturbance of the boat. And I was always like, okay, how do I look as long and loose and relaxed? But also I think another thing that's overlooked is like that guy had a very strong trunk to leg dynamic.
Mhm.
Like those moved in unison and it was a very blended and it kind of goes counter what I was saying about the truncated and the big swing, but like
Yeah.
you could tell that his core and his low back was picking up the load in a way that was supportive to his legs
Yeah.
and there was a blend to his stroke. And like I would always freeze frame it and second by second like tick along and see
That's
like
so
those things again and like doing all of this and having a constant dialogue with myself
mhm.
in my stroke.
Yeah.
And when I got out to practice, again, I was excited to be like, okay, well, I watched this the other night. And so now I want to try to apply it. Like, this is what this guy was doing. Like, even down to how people carried their faces, right? Like,
Yeah.
on the recovery, like, there were some guys that were like, and just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
completely.
yeah.
And then other guys that are like,
Yeah, yeah. So what
right?
if we
Like,
pull up some stills from your Paris final, are they all gonna be like that?
they're gonna be like loose towards the beginning, and then towards the end, you're gonna start saying,
Yeah, yeah. I remember I raced Ollie Zeidler and I saw the shot of my face and then the shot of his face and I was like, I remember leaving that race, I was like, I need to get more impassive in my
I
face.
mean, yeah, that dude is in a league of his own in terms of just like what his physio, and also it's crazy to see him race because like he like will carry that through the finish line when he knows he's got it.
Yeah.
But then if you go to Lucerne in 24, when Simone was pulling in on him, like you could just see like the psychology change in how his face was carried. Because
Mhm.
all of a sudden he goes from his like Terminator, like I
Yeah,
will
yeah.
destroy you, to like, and then
Oh,
like when you didn't see it in Paris, you didn't see it in the semifinal or his heat or anything, but like you saw it in Lucerne, and then in the other races you can go back where he gets pipped by someone. Like it's in that last like 450 meters because like in his race profile he wants to go 131 and just be open water. Like in the 131 is an exaggeration, but I mean like he would go 136 in the first 500 in the
yeah.
single.
Yeah, yeah,
Absurd. But like you can tell once he gets to the last 500, like if people are pulling in on him and he doesn't have enough tank, like juice in the gas or juice in the tank,
yeah.
like he like really starts like
Yeah, yeah.
so like I would go back
Yeah.
and watch that stuff.
I'm
Those
gonna
are the
watch
things
that.
that
I'm
I would
gonna watch that.
observe.
I said I set a tip out to people recently when I was doing stuff in the gym. I used to always think when I was lifting weights, I would try and keep a loose face even when I was lifting weights. So it's one of those things that has a really good, it's controllable and has a good trigger effect. So okay,
Exactly.
cool. So yeah, awesome to hear that. I think that's something everybody should be doing. If only there was just an excellent YouTube channel that had lots of footage of oh wait, no, there's the Edge Rowing YouTube channel. What?
Oh
Oh, it
my
does. I
gosh, a
forgot.
nice data resource of great videos. Wow. If only that was
No.
if it existed when I was like 14, 15, I'd be watching all your videos.
Oh, thank.
And
I didn't
I
mean to. I
watched a
didn't
lot of
mean
like
to frame it like that in any way. But
no, no, but like it's what I and the reason I got like somewhat active on social media and I could be better, but is I always put myself in like the high school me shoes. It's like if I
of
saw a
course.
guy, at least from the United States perspective, that was out there actually doing it, documenting it, showing like, hey, this is possible, like that would give me so much more like one excitement, but two confidence. And so
Yeah,
that's why I was like, in the US system, like social media, at least on the men's side, it's not super engaged with, generally speaking. But I was like, okay, well, I'm in the spot, like, might as well do it.
yeah. Your YouTube
And
channel, your
and
vlogs and stuff like that. I love your vlogs.
yeah, and again, like, I just wish that I had more time to and like energy to dedicate to building those more. But it's you get into the
Yeah,
system
full
and you
time.
know exactly like you're just
Yeah,
absolutely buried. And then like I got a job on top of that, so I'm
yeah.
like, there's only so much time that I had, and like
I
I
think
never
that's
wanted to
fair
just
enough.
quick
Yeah.
cut, stupid, like short. Like I wanted to put in effort, right?
Mhm.
And like make it something that I would want to watch myself. So like if I wanted to make a 10-minute video and you know this, like cutting and editing and reformatting and being like, well, does this make
Yeah.
sense? Like it takes a lot of time and like I wanted it to be a quality product, not just something that like you just are like, okay, well, this is just a guy doing his stuff. Like I wanted to be like, this is my
Yeah.
routine and this is how you can see it in a way that is entertaining to watch. That was always my approach with it, at
Mm.
least.
Yeah, no, it's great stuff. Definitely check it out if you want to go back and follow Justin training through the world champs and your full-time job as well, which I thought was just super impressive. What's maybe if you had like a few sentences or maybe a paragraph of advice to give to your younger high school self, what would you tell them? Or any other high school student for that matter?
I think there was a lot of points when I was like pretty angry in terms of
Yeah.
where I was at with my career for rowing. Um, I felt
Angry that you
like
weren't progressing enough?
I fortunately had the luxury of like there was only 1 year where I never PR'd on a 2K, and that was because we never tested the 2K. Um, and actually, now that I'm thinking about it, and then it was the same thing for a 6K, and except for 1 year where we just didn't test a 6K. I didn't PR. So I had always seen at least a physiological progress. So, like I was my first 2K ever, I was like an 805. And then by the time I left high school, I was like 620. And then my end of my senior year of college, I was 554. And in Paris cycle, I went 47. So like I'd always seen, and I knew like, there's only so much, juice you can squeeze, and I never was under any illusion that I had the DNA to go a sub 540. Like you got to be a cut of a different cloth.
Yeah, you got to have the
But
genes.
yeah, exactly. I was like, realistically, I could probably tap out to like 44 at most, if I had like the banger of the test of all tests. But um, I think like it was more so in terms of like the performance relative to where I saw like my image of myself, right? I was at a smaller high school or smaller
Oh yeah.
club, and sometimes I'd be like, what am I doing? Like I need to go row at a better club. I need to move to Sarasota to row with Sarasota crew. Or, then I went to row at Drexel, and we had some really good performances, but there were some other times where I was like, why aren't we, instead of going for like the D final, why are we not competing for mid C final? Right.
Mm.
Like there was a lot of those, instances, and then I would always get frantic because I'm like, oh, is this going to impact me later down the line in my national team career? And I think like I wish I was able to say to myself back then, like, look, you can use that as like a fuel source, but don't let it bring you down. Like, don't get angry just because,
Mhm.
you didn't make the A final at the Dadville Regatta in your junior year. Like I remember I after we didn't make the A final, which was not good. It was very not good. But things have this way of like working out, and so then we didn't qualify the men's eight for the IRA at that year, but then we ended up going for the men's Cox four, which was this great campaign. It was myself, a friend of mine, Doug Davis, Dario, and another Serbian named Lazar, and it was this great like couple weeks after the Dadville leading up to the IRAs, and we really like gelled as a crew, and we got physically faster. We were coached by Ivo Krakic, who's now the head coach of LaSalle men's rowing,
Okay.
and he's a Croatian, and so like he had us doing the Sinkovic brothers like training program pretty much, and like in that frustration, I remember being so angry and just like lashing out and just being like kind of not a great teammate. And then we got into this scenario where we really bonded together, and for a Dadville team, like our bow speed like was going 625 on the 2K at the time, and we ended up making the grand final in the IRAs that year. And it got canceled because of weather, which is a whole other story. But like looking back on that, I wish I had a way to have the foresight of like it's going to be okay. You just don't need to
Mhm.
waste that emotional energy being angry at your circumstance. You
So
put in the
that's
work, it will eventually come to fruition.
okay. So yeah, I guess you're saying you wish you had that knowledge then. If you could rationalize it and you can't say, "Oh, trust me, look at me now, like look at where I got future me like past me, how would you reason with that person? Because I'm sure there's a lot of other people that are trying to progress, and for whatever reason, uncontrollables around them, they can't progress and they're frustrated with it. So maybe how would you? It's hard to say, and sometimes you
Yeah.
can't. But how would you rationalize with that person?
I think my best rationalization, if I could like package it nicely, would be looking back on historical progress. Like, yes, you're at this point and you're pissed and you're frustrated and, all of these other things, but like look back on where you came from to even where you are at that point, where you're at your most
Yeah.
frustrated, right? Like I had come from this tiny school and like I was barely in my second novice eight.
Mhm.
And then like, you saw these 2Ks, like I struggled for so long to break 7 minutes and like going back on because that's the hard data of like
Yeah.
look at all of that and you still progress, you just got to give it some time, right? I
Did you
think
keep
that
a
would be
journal? Sorry to interrupt. Did you keep a journal or any log or anything like that? Just
I had a couple of them across
right.
the gambit, and I think they're all at my home in PA. But yeah, I would write I wrote down everything that it wasn't
Mhm.
organized by any means, but it was just like I remember I was like in school and I would just like write down like my 2K splits that I wanted to hit on my upcoming
Oh,
tests
cool.
while I'm like in class. And
Have
so
you
like
looked
on
back
the
on it?
yeah, of course. Like I still have like a ton of that stuff. Like I wanted to break 630, right? And
Mhm.
I would write down like my ideal splits. Okay, go out 138, 138, 137, 134. And then that would get me under 630. That would just
Mhm.
be like my 500s and like I had other journals too of like, okay, I want to get this much sleep and like my goals relative
Cool.
to okay, what we did in practice that day and what I did extra. I would also write down like if it was
Mhm.
a 20-minute session after the practice or like a 30-minute session or I woke up early to do it. I didn't do that many times because I
Right.
was that's tough for a high schooler. But
Yeah. So
that
that would
I
have
would
been
write
something you could have used to look back on then to give you that.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yes. I
Cool.
would have said go look at those journals of like how mad you are right now, but like look at where you were.
Mhm.
You were trying to barely skimp by and qualify for the youth national championships. And now you're in a varsity eight in a college program in a D1 school. Like it's still something,
Mhm.
it's not nothing. And are you where you want to be right now? No, but you got to understand like these things in this sport. I think that's another part of the addictiveness is it takes time. There's no immediate gratification in the sport of
Yeah.
rowing. It's like the man at the top of the mountain didn't fall there,
Hmm.
right? It's what happened in Paris was years of ups and downs
Yeah.
and struggles and we all left Tokyo without the medal, right?
Hmm.
It's that is an emotional baggage that we all carried for, years and like I don't know where we would be had we had, gotten a bronze in Tokyo, right? Is like does our perspective change? Does our approach to training change, right? And that to me is what is so appealing about it is like it's a long game. And that's what
Hmm.
I want to kind of like would have gone back to remind myself at that age. It's the long game. It's people around you are achieving great success now, but like put in the work and the time and beat your craft to a perfection, and I guarantee you're going to be in a different spot 2 years from now.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's super interesting to hear. I kept some journal. I wish I logged more, just to have some context to do that. Like looking
Yeah,
back on it. I think a good quote I heard, I'm probably gonna butcher this, but it was something like, if you can't appreciate where you have come from, you're never gonna be able to appreciate um where you want to be when you look back on now or something like that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a practicing thing. You need to
It's
force
it's
yourself to do it.
it's it's completely true. Like the essence of that quote is completely true. Like kind of knowing the long and winding trail of where I came from and all of the naysayers along the way. It's funny. I remember this is another tangent and pulls into the essence of what the quote you just described. It was my junior year. I just made the U.S. Canamex team, so it's
Yeah.
like one step below the
Mhm.
under 19 national team. So we went to Canada to race Canada, Mexico, and it was us. And so that was like my first like U.S. team competition for international. And we had kind of all understood where our paths were in the camp. And so there was one group going to like Spain and one group going to Club Nats, and we were going to Canamex. And we were all just like sitting around and talking, and we were like, "Oh, what are your plans for like next summer?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go back and try and make the U19 national team." And this guy like looks me dead in the face and he's like, "You're not gonna do that. You didn't even make the
Oh.
top group this time. Like, you're
Ah.
not fast enough on the 2K. Like, why would
Ah.
you think that you would do that?"
Ah.
And I was like, "Okay, fucking
Yeah.
sorry for my French, but
No,
like,
that's
all
all
right,
good.
literally watch me." And I did.
Yes.
And then I made my first
Goosebumps.
Olympics. Yeah,
Goosebumps.
yeah.
Hey, if you're
Okay. Well,
listening,
it's like
guy, Canamex guy, look at him now. That's
I well, it's
that
like
fires me up.
you just loaded me up with, and I still think about that, right? It's like because it is such this long winding road, but like now I can have that perspective to look back on that moment, me in that moment, sitting in that chair, hearing that dude project that onto me. I
Yeah.
was like, watch me,
Let's
watch
go.
me, brother.
I love that.
So
I love it when people, even if I don't want to do something, if someone tells me I can't do it, I'm like, now I want to do it. Even if there's
yeah,
no good in it. Well, maybe that's an extreme, but as much as
yeah.
you want to be internal and have your own reasons, I think it's always just makes it a bit more fun.
And I do think like in terms of approaching our sport, it's like you do have to have some stoicism of like, okay, I can
Yeah.
control my controllables, but like in terms of finding that extra motivation, that stuff gets me gassed up. When
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
are along the way doubting or like, being like, oh, nah, it's not gonna happen. Like that gets me out of bed just that nth degree easier.
Mhm.
That gets me through that last 15 minutes of the 90-minute session at the end of the week that much
Yeah.
easier. And it's like, I'm not saying like I don't want anyone to have to go through that, obviously, but like
Yeah.
if you have that moment, like don't let it take you out. Don't let it bring you down. Put it in your reserves and just be like,
Yeah.
nah,
It's a
watch
tool.
me do what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like you're saying, you can use it as put it into your pocket and then you have it there for when you need it. It reminds me, one thing I learned through trial and error was anytime I would back off on an erg or miss an erg entirely when my mindset was like way off, I learned I'd be disappointed after doing that. So I would just put that in my pocket. And then the next time I'd go to do that or back off, I would just remember that one time. But if I did it again, I just then had two reasons. And I'd start to think about those times that I backed off as like positives that I could use as reasons not to do it. And again, the more I viewed it like that, eventually I had like 10 or 15 times that happened. It got me
Right.
to the point where I was rarely doing it. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
And,
you
and
can,
it just fortifies you and Mike Tatey like said this, and I don't know if this is a origination quote from him, but like he said it to me, and like it makes the most sense to me. Is rowing is 25% physical, your output, your watts, your breakdown, your height, your weight, whatever.
mhm.
25% is technical. You can't be a monkey. You got to row efficiently. You got to row long. You got to row, extremely well. And the other part, 50% is mental. And I always was under the understanding is if you can max out, get 49.999% of the mental, the
Mhm.
other two just fall in line. The
Yeah,
other two just kind
yeah,
of complement. Like you can't change your height, but you can change your output on the erg. You can change your output on the oar. You can't change your arc length, but you can change how efficient you are in the boat,
yeah,
how you row with the other people. Like if you can master that 50%, the other things just kind of fall in line. And like the mental game of this sport and things in general are what I think people should be very prioritized
yeah.
in on top of everything else is like when you get your edge. Let's see what I did there.
Yeah.
When you get your edge right, everything else falls in line. And over time it does.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what like people, I want to tell people that when we're coaching all the time is if I always try and spot common factors and you look at different training, the A final of your Paris final, for example, different training programs, different techniques, different parts of the world, whatever. But I think the most common thing that all those crews would have had is their mindset. So when you talked about maximizing your mindset, I'd be super interested to hear how you went about developing that, or you maybe sometimes you can't be as aware of how you developed your mindset. Like maybe talk us through what you think a good mindset is.
I think so for me, at least in terms of like the day of, and I wouldn't recommend doing this like at all times, is I like to row angry. I like to artificially get myself, and again goes back to those storing motivations, is like I feel like I can be more, I can endure more pain if I'm angry, and if I'm really in a point where I'm like I don't care, like I'm gonna obliterate whatever I can do to put my bow ball across the finish
Mhm.
line. Because if I'm in a point where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doubting it, like I don't feel like I have that mental edge. And so I'll listen to pretty aggressive music,
Like
or
what?
watch like hype videos, or like I don't know, like 3 Days Grace and like Breaking Benjamin, and there's a new band that's like metalcore. Hold on, let me just like I don't want to can't believe I'm getting their name wrong. But like kind of like stuff that gets me like really fired, Motionless in White. So
Okay.
my W. And then like I also this can sound so dumb, but like Attack on Titan, like the main character's like this is an anime. The main character's like whole shtick is like he's gonna destroy the world. Like that's the mentality that I
Oh,
try and
alter
get
ego.
myself into. Yeah, it's like Aaron, it's like you have to have that approach at least when you're getting into the boat, knowing like you can't be like frantic. It's a mental thing. You can't be like physically
Mhm.
like over the top. But I
Yeah.
think that for me has always worked. I always felt like my best races were when I kind of like timed that to perfection, so
Yeah.
that I'm sitting on the start line like I'm going to destroy everyone around me. Um, and like that's what's beautiful about sport. It's non-contact, so it's like I can
Yeah.
just take the
Parents
energy
would have
out.
been happy.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not like a combat sport. So then in terms of the other mental aspects is like self-talk,
Yeah.
being comfortable talking to yourself, and kind of like checking in. It's like, am I tired because of the training, or am I tired because of other factors? Are there other things going on, and trying to find ways to silo the life outside of the sport? Because in appropriate cases too. So like if my grandmother passed away when I landed in Italy leading up to Paris.
Sorry.
And so I had to make a concerted effort to remove that emotional until
Mhm.
afterwards, because I had three other guys and my coach that were relying on me to be at my 100% every practice that we did from now until Paris. So
Yeah.
my mom called me and she's like, and to be fair, so she had, she was 91, so it I had
Okay.
like understood that it was coming, but a death in the family is a death in the family. And so I had to kind of remove that, not think about it. Anytime that would pop into my head, I did a mental exercise of putting all my baggage on this like white table in this white room, and then just doing a clean sweep,
Mhm.
right? Like just wiping that off. And this is just a mental exercise that I would do. And then all of a
How did you,
sudden,
is that, did you work with somebody on that, or is that something you developed
made it up
yourself?
myself. I've
Yeah.
been doing it for years, of just
Okay.
like when I don't want to think about something, I just take the idea of it and I put it on this white table, and I'm in this white room and I clear it off the table.
Mhm.
I don't know
Yeah.
why, but it works
Yeah.
for me. And now all of a sudden I'm looking at a white table again. Like
Yeah.
I had to do that repeatedly, and like over time I felt like it worked more and more. Whereas at first, like if I had racing thoughts like a night before a race, or like it's 2 a.m. and I'm like really nervous or something, like I would try it and it didn't work. But I felt like I have been able to, like, that's my default.
Okay.
And I'm sure there's some, mental word for it, or like a meditative.
Yeah, that's what I'd be interested to hear, a psychologist or somebody with yeah in a profession to explain that, because there must be something, and I guess that's something maybe that is very different about the Olympic year, is that you make it your absolute priority, and just in these things that you go through in life, they have to wait until it's over.
Exactly.
So, okay, so would you use that similar technique when it came to, you know, um, training? Like, I'd be interested. Those are kind of some of the racing tactics, and then for the kind of external rowing life stress and ups
Yeah.
and downs. Were there any things you would do in training to help yourself? And then also, actually, sorry, another question. Any sort of self-talk that you would use, any words, any kind of language that you'd use to yourself?
I, yeah, there's a lot of self-talk that goes into training. And I think I already alluded to this, but leading up, like going into new weeks, I'd just write down stuff. I'm trying to like see, I kind of still do this, of just like lists of stuff. Yeah. So like, this is just like, the text doesn't matter, but it's just like stuff I needed to do like a couple weeks ago. And I would
Yeah.
just write it down, write it all out, and like as I would go through it, I would just cross out, and I would
Yeah.
just do that all the time. And like I have that all written down, but there wasn't like, a grand book of all of those. I had the big goals written down, and I had those like backfill goals, and I kind of mentioned this to the edge rowing community, but like the stuff that on a Sunday afternoon, I'm getting ready for the week. I'm like, these are the things that I want to accomplish. That are like the tiny stuff that can kind of fit as I'm going through it. And then like so that got me to the training. And then in terms of like going through it is music really helped me.
Yeah.
Finding a track or different genres. Like I love everything, like country music to
Yeah.
like metalcore to rap to EDM. Finding stuff that helped me get through those sessions. And then like in terms of, training with a group, if you can find a group that is all on the same book and all aligned in terms of like their approach, and that's what I think was special about the four is like we all had that base understanding so that even all of us were extremely tired. We would do some like chain slaps or like motivate each other, right? Like your teammates are a resource as much as they are your
Mhm.
teammates, and
Was
and
that
like
something you
having
talk about like strategically, like, hey, let's try and motivate each other, or did that happen
yeah.
naturally?
We spoke it out loud, and then it just became natural.
Mhm.
Um, it was 2023. We had just been named to the crew in June, and when it was final, it was after the second World Cup in 2023. I rowed a pair with Peter Quinton. We got fourth to Tom and Ollie, who went 6:13. I was like, oh, so we went 6:21, and I was like, Jesus, how did those guys go that much faster? And then the men's four got third, and so we did a series of other seat racing. So June 2023, it was the four of us. We sat in a hotel lobby, and we were like, okay, we have to commit everything to this and
Mhm.
see where we can turn out. So 23, we got silver, and we looked at the drawing board, and we looked at the race profile, and we're like, there is a possibility we can win this gold. And so then in February of 24, we had to go through seat racing again just to in the US system, like there's no like, oh, I have the keys, therefore this is the boat. Like you still have to trial it and proof it. So there was a
Yeah.
couple of seat races, but the understanding was that if you wanted to get your seat into the men's four, you had to unseat one of them by a definitive, like you had to move the needle.
Okay.
Um, and that was, hats off to Yosi for making that pretty clear. And so we were named the four again. So we sat in Ford's garage in Sarasota, Florida. It's pretty funny to have a burger named after us now, which is great.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I remember.
And we laid out at that booth our kind of covenants and like our structure. And one of those things was like, there's going to be a couple of points throughout the summer and the next few months where we're going to be so damn tired. We don't want to do it. We just want to like take the afternoon off. We said like, unless you are physically injured and like you have something broken or you're running fever or whatever that is, you are going to do that session. And we are all going to be there for each other when we're in those moments. And there was so many like I'm pretty affected by the heat, and the guys knew that. And there were some sessions where I was like, guys, like my heart rate was like 196 for a 4K, like the full 4K was 196, but like
Right.
they were there, they were like. My nickname's Johnny Bones, and they're like, Johnny, we got you, brother. We got you. Just like you just got to get through this session.
Blowing
And
air
like,
on you, fanning you down.
yeah, yeah. It was a positive. It was like I was just getting through it, but I had three guys around me that like Grady like he's he was just so positive. Like he was just like, all I know is we got four absolute beasts in this boat, and like that positive self-talk and chatter and whatnot. And again, there were ups and downs, and like he was getting married later, and he had that to balance of planning his wedding, and Nick and Paulina's their wedding was coming up, and like all of us had all these other things outside that would weigh on us. But it was up to us in those moments, in those training sessions, to one, do the self-talk, which is great, but also rely on each other, lean on each other.
Mhm.
And I think like having a crew, physiologically, we were at the standard. I wouldn't say we were, above the standard by any means, but I think something that differentiated us was that component of the crew. It was the stuff on
Yeah, the
the in
intangible
between the
stuff.
sessions that fed into the
Mm,
performance and into the consistency of the
yeah,
sessions of being like, okay, that piece wasn't the greatest. Let's go attack on the next piece instead of like taking a step back and then doing the self-defeating. And I've seen it in other crews where,
yeah,
it's
gets a bit, yeah,
it's
destructive.
borderline toxic and you
Yeah,
can see it in the results.
for sure, for sure. How did you go about being a supportive teammate in that environment?
I mean, like it was the little things of like, hey guys, I'm going to the grocery store. Anybody want some ice cream? It was having conversations of just being like open and vulnerable, being like, all right, like where are you at? What can we do to get you back to normalcy? And then also understanding when people needed space. It's you're in this enclosed environment and yeah, the pressure is at the highest it's ever been. And it can be really easy to just be like overbearing. As
Yeah,
much as I was just talking about like, oh, like talking and whatnot, but like if someone needs to cool off for an afternoon, like don't get down their throat.
yeah,
And knowing the appropriate timing to be like, hey, here's the open hand, like let's chat. I think that is also pretty critical. And like again, it goes back to like we had that understanding going into it. We'd all been here before, the months leading up to the Olympics, people will just start doing weird stuff because their emotions are running high. People might lash out quicker than they used to, or they might pick up some like crazy habit or whatever. Like we just understand like that stuff starts to change that dynamic as people are like,
hmm
oh, how do we get faster? Oh, let's try new things and whatnot. Like we had this conversation in the Ford's garage of like, we are going to do what we're going to do, experiment where we need to, and then kind of rely on each other to keep each other in check is the fundamental that we had. And again, like having that open dialogue, having that open, like, yeah, I don't want to call it intimacy, but like having that like understanding,
yeah, and
the
that
four of
trust
us, the trust
and
exactly
respect
is
as
is
well. Yeah.
all of us respected each other. And like each of us brought something to the crew that I think was invaluable, and like it's a frustrating sport at some point, but like mitigating those times and
Mm.
elongating the times that, the boat's just moving along and singing and like having a good time with it. Like that's where I think we really moved the needle.
Awesome. And do you think that was the big change, the big thing that kind of got you guys the gold in Paris was that last sort of tweak?
Yeah, it was 23. We kind of showed up. We're like, okay, we think we're fast, but
Hmm
like, a lot could
Yeah.
have changed between World Cup 2 and Serbia. So let's see how this heat goes. Oh, we just beat the Olympic champions. Okay,
Yeah.
was that a fluke? Okay, like that's their four guys. Like, and they did some
Mhm.
shuffling, and we're like, all right, that's all right. Let's see. In the semifinal, we win. We beat the Dutch. We're going a pretty good fast time, and I'm like, are we legit? And then in the final, like we were leading to the first 500, and then we kind of just like didn't row as efficiently as Freddie and the rest of the crew. Like they just rowed better than us. But like we were disappointed. We wanted to win, but at the same time, we were like, okay, so there's something here. There is a substance here, and there's a structure that we can build from. And then I think like that in combination with the mentality of like all in 100%, everything we do from now on, including the mental, including the emotional, including like the openness, this is going to affect our boat speed as much as those hard erg sessions and the VO2 max tests and whatnot. Like everything affects our boat speed at the end of the day. So even if it's a 0.0001% change, we want
Mhm.
that going in favor, not detracting. So that was the mentality all four of us had, and I think that was the difference of like, all right, we have the structure now, let's build upon it, and everything that we do between now and then. So our diets, our sleep, our alcohol consumption, like all of those things as were just as important as doing the hard work and rowing well to us at
Okay.
least.
Cool. No, I love to hear it. And it's even, I'm sure there's people out there in a crew and they maybe don't like their other crew member for whatever reason. But I think if you have that, like you're saying, the respect and also just that understanding of kind of why you're doing it and the purpose that you both want to make the boat go faster, and you don't have to get along in some ways. But if you know the reasons you're doing things is to make the boat go quicker, then that can kind of give the room to have that support. Just because I know we're getting close to time here, Justin. What um what was the most unexpected thing that happened during the Paris Olympics for you, going through that whole journey and winning gold in terms of like how it felt or how the race was or how it was afterwards?
There was a lot. There was a lot.
Uh,
I think I'll go back to in the last 250 meters, and here I go. I'm getting goosebumps. I was dog tired. Crowd was deafening, but I just thought to myself, you have to be present. Remember this, remember this, remember
Oh yeah.
this. As much as I was thinking about, okay, row long, we're going up in the rate, that started creeping in my mind, like be present, be present, be present.
Oh
Like,
really?
unless something goes wrong, you will win. It was like going through my mind. Like unless a rigger fell out or someone caught a crab, but I wasn't even thinking like you just have to be mindful. And so I'm glad I was thinking about
Cool.
that because crossing the finish line, it's just the emotion of it all, like the elation, the achievement, the crowd. Again, like it was just deafeningly loud, and then like a little bit of sadness of being like, "Dang, we just did all this, and that's it. Like that's all she wrote. It's
Oh
gonna be
yeah.
over." But then like I get to celebrate, I get to go, do all these great things, and then like I had just accomplished a childhood dream of mine. So all of this hits all at once as like the bubbles are running under me from the finish line.
Oh, so you were
And
feeling that? Sorry, were you feeling that in the last 250 as well? Or is that only when you cross?
it was once I heard that burp, that's when it really, really hit. But like
Right.
I had Nick like behind me, and this is kind of like our race profile. Like I would typically be completely tank empty in the last 50 meters, and like he's like an absolute like anaerobic beast, and like he was like, I got you, Justin, I got you, and like Grady's sprinting. Liam, like he had made his red call, which is like that's it. You lights out. You put it down. You put the
Hmm.
foot down, and every watt goes on that oar to respond to the final move because the Kiwis, they were coming back to us. Um, but like at that moment, crossing the finish line, that's when it all hit. And I, it was this moment of like, and Liam said it was dreamlike, and I couldn't agree more because like I'm just in this disbelief. We had just done it, and that accomplishment of like, okay, all the sacrifice, all of those things ends justify the means. And I had that feeling, and I always joke like if I could sell that feeling in a bottle, I'd be a billionaire because
Yeah.
like there was no other experience that I've had in my life to that point like that. And I can't help but imagine, my heart rate being 206 at the time didn't like compound on that. But I think that moment to me stood out a ton. And like I had not anticipated what that was going to feel like. I had just got to the finish line in any of my mental scenarios that I'd run through, not the after part. And then, we go through and we're on the medal stand, and I it was just so raw emotion. And then, they
Yeah.
start playing the national anthem, and I'm a patriot myself. Like I love this country, and like getting to represent it at the highest level, and I just started bawling because there was no other response. Like between my grandmother and the
Hmm.
flag going up, and my family being there, and like my brother in arms on either side of me, and like that to me just was just the coolest experience that I've had. Um, and like the litany of stuff that we got up to after that, we were just like carted around for
You
the
guys are
press
everywhere.
tour. We got to meet Elmo. We got to go backstage with
Elmo.
Snoop Dogg. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It was pretty cool. It was like you understand the allure and the magic of the Olympics and those kind
Mhm.
of experiences. Like I couldn't walk around on the street. It was like my first experience, and probably only experience being a celebrity. Like if I was wearing Team USA gear, like within 30 minutes, if someone like actually took time to like look at me, they'd be approaching me asking for like an autograph. Like I'm not making that up. Like I was just sitting and like I only
Mhm.
had Team USA gear to wear because like they just give us all this kit. and like I shipped all my other stuff home at that point. And sure enough, like, and then once one person starts asking for pictures, autograph,
Yeah.
like they all start coming. So like that was really cool. But I think in terms of the rowing aspects of it, um, the the thing that I noticed the most was like the emotion of the boat park as the racing progressed. You could tell when a crew was doing well relative to their expectations just by their body languages
Oh yeah.
around where like their pre-race meetings or their pre-launch for practice meetings
Interesting.
versus when crews were like doing pretty poor. Like the the shoulders are slumped.
Mm.
And like I'd never noticed that at other international
That's what I was going
regattas
to ask.
before so much as like the Olympics. Like it was
Mhm.
very
Really
apparent, and it could have just been
interesting.
like
I've never heard that
the
before.
I you asked for stuff that like stood out to me,
Oh
and
yeah,
now all
that's
the
what I
memories
wanted
are
to. Yeah, it's
flooding
super
back.
interesting.
So it's like I'm wondering, and like again, like our boat had done well, so we were in the camp of like, yeah, we're loose, we're cool, we're just having a good time, and like another crew just a bay over if they like skipped their oars, it was like what's going on? Oh my God! Like and like you could tell based on their practices or whatever they were
Mhm.
seeing, they were not in their expectation.
Oof. Brutal. Brutal. And maybe it's like you're saying that first uh learning from Tokyo, that amplifier of the Olympics teach like these things come up and you've never
It's
dealt with them before. So it's these crews, a lot of them have probably never dealt with that situation to know
exactly.
those emotions can come up. So
It's a
cool. Oh,
different beast.
yeah, super interesting. Thanks for sharing that insight. Cool, but yeah, we're kind of out of time here. One last quick question: what's the next few? You're probably sick of getting asked this, but or you
Yeah, I
yeah
this is it's been tough for me to go through these decision making.
yeah okay
So I will say I have not retired officially yet. I have my wedding coming up in October, and I plan to make that decision kind of around that time.
okay.
If not
Time
another
will
in a
tell.
week or two. Exactly.
Though with
And
time.
like the the game in terms of priority has changed for me mentally, fundamentally. So I
Mhm.
want to start a family is now number one.
Yeah.
And there are ways that I can continue to pursue the Olympics and go for gold again, where that can still remain number one. But at the same time, like if that is in a compromising position to going for LA, like I have to weigh
Mm.
that, right? Like so it used to be go for gold, go for gold, go for gold. Everything else filled, backfilled, and okay, we can make that decision later. Now I'm in this position where like that's going to be in
Mm.
my number one for my fiance and I. So, there's a lot
Right.
of stuff going on with, I was a global economy. But then like I have to weigh like, okay, well, if I do this, like, is there a way to make sure that I'm not like compromising, my early or late 20s at this point in terms of earnings income.
Mm.
So there's a lot of stuff that I still have to balance, conversations with my fiance, my family,
Yeah.
potentially my coaches and whatnot. But I've not retired just yet, but I'm still kind of like weighing all of those decisions. And in a few months, I'll make an official
Yeah.
announcement. But whenever my official announcement will be official. And then if I do go for LA, that'll be the last one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Like, I'm sure you've been asked that quite a few times, but yeah, just having spoke to a lot of people that are kind of in that similar position to you, it all sounds like it's just that there's no need to make the decision now. It's just time. You'll
Yeah,
figure it out. So,
exactly.
cool. Okay. Awesome. Justin, thank you so much for sharing all that insight and making the time for the podcast and so much value for that just in this podcast and then also just through what you've shared on social media, on your Instagram and on in interviews and on YouTube. Like I think the speak for the whole rowing community when I say that when people appreciate it, and you're certainly doing what you said you wish you had when you were in high school. So that's awesome to see. And yeah, hope the prep into the wedding goes well. That's yeah,
Yeah.
super exciting time and yeah, all the best.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much. And yeah, happy to be on and thank you for inviting me.
Of course. Cheers.